And what she said was, you know, if we mentioned impeachment before the election in November '06, we wouldn't have made so many strides. We might not even got the majority. And so, you know, it just really makes sense. Just don't do anything that could possibly let Fox News say that you're being divisive or even divisive, okay? Just don't do anything at all. The president's numbers are in the toilet, and the vice presidents have already been flushed down there. Avoid any possibility that Fox or any other news outlets will accuse you of being divisive, and you'll take the majority, you'll take the presidency. What does that mean? That means don't bother with this Constitution. Don't bother with this president who started unnecessary wars. Even his previous spokesman has admitted to that now. Don't bother with a president that is spying on us or that condones torture. Actually, what most people don't realize is that going after these lawyers, John Yoo and David Addington, that's easy. These guys are beyond the pale. But they're only giving ex post facto advice to the president. Why do I say ex post facto? Because the president, by memorandum, February 7, 2002, authorized torture. It's on the web. Download it. Bush torture February 7. You'll see in PDF format exactly the way the president signed a two-pager saying, we shall treat prisoners, Al-Qaeda and Taliban, quote, humanely, comma, as appropriate, and as consistent with military necessity, end quote. Now, that's not what Geneva says. That's the loophole for which George Tenet, the head of the CIA at the time, and Don Rumsfeld, the head of the Defense Department, drove the Mack truck of torture, February 7, 2002. A memorandum, an action memorandum to the principals, the heads, the people who are members of the National Security Council. So, that's February. We're talking about John Yoo and David Addington doing their mental gymnastics down in June and August.
Well, why do you think that the Democrats are so willing to forsake the Constitution in favor of more political power?
Well, because many of the top Democrats are accomplices in this. Impeachment is conducted on things like torture, on things like illegal eavesdropping, to which the president has admitted. Who else is implicated? Nancy Pelosi. Why? Because she was briefed on it. Far from objecting, far from telling the rest of us what was going on, she is reported to have cheered them on and said, go to it. Torture, illegal eavesdropping, all those things she was briefed on. She brags about being the longest member, longest tenure, having the longest tenure on the House Intelligence Committee, and she's still on it by virtue of ex officio, okay? So, that's the main reason why, and that's why John J. Rockefeller, I couldn't believe it, after he gets finished being honest about the way the president lied us into war with that Senate report that he chaired, gratuitously, before he leaves the podium, he says, and by the way, impeachment is ridiculous. Well, scratch my head. Here's a senator who's got nothing to say about impeachment in the beginning. Why is he? And I'm thinking, whoa, there it is. There it is. He's thinking impeachment because he's an accomplice in this. He's an accomplice with Nancy Pelosi because he approved it. Why did he approve it? Because he's, by law, briefed on these things. He did not object to torture. He actually advocated the ex post facto holding harmless the AT&T and other telecom company. And so, you got a very corrupt system here. And so it takes a person with guts like Dennis Kucinich, Cindy Sheehan, and others to bring this to the fore and embarrass our body politic into insisting that Congress people and eventually senators, if it gets to the Senate, do their job under the Constitution. I'm from Virginia, okay? I live very close to where George Mason is buried. George Mason being one of the two main framers of our Constitution. He and James Madison, another Virginian, okay? I'm pretty proud of being in Virginia. Now, Mason wouldn't sign that Constitution. You know why? because it didn't have the Bill of Rights in it. It did have impeachment, and I can hear him at night. I can hear him at night moaning, rolling over in his grave, saying, "Oh, we hung around in Philadelphia all hot summer, put in impeachment 6 times in the Constitution." What is wrong with these, quote, self-proclaimed distinguished senators like John Warner, or self-proclaimed representatives who shy away from doing their constitutional duty and preserving the rights, the inalienable rights that were given to us by gutsy people like Jefferson, Mason, Madison, Jefferson.
Thank you.
Welcome.
It's 2:30. You said.
To my knowledge, no one has raised this. Naji Sabri, the Iraqi foreign minister, is mentioned tangentially in the latest draft that I saw of Kucinich's one article of impeachment. But, you know, when it comes right down to it, the celebrated questions, what the president knew and when he knew it, can be definitively answered if you just ask George Tenet or the former CIA officials who know that the president was told on the September 18th, 2002, 6 months before the invasion of Iraq. He was told that the Iraqi foreign minister, who had been turned and was working for us, whose previous reporting had all been vetted and verified, he told us there were no weapons of mass destruction. And what did our president do? He said, suppress that report. Don't tell Colin Powell. Don't tell Congress. I want to see it suppressed. And George Tenet went one better. Guess what he did? He changed the report around. And now the report did read, Naji Sabri has reported that there are all manner of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. I've never seen the like of it. I've never seen CIA officials cooperate in this kind of deception of our own government. That's what happened. And it's all out there. The only problem is the mainstream media won't cover it.
Has there been any effort to subpoena Tenet to testify?
There was some early talk about having Tenet come, especially after he wrote his book and admitted to a lot of these things. But, you know, that sort of disappeared. There's sort of an elite in this town, and they sort of protect one from the other. And so that's a question that John Conyers should be asked. Why is it that Tenet has not been subpoenaed, has not been asked to testify, Tenet and countless others who know about these crimes and should be put under oath? Now, I'll tell you one thing. Tenet has already perjured himself. He perjured himself before the 9/11 Commission. 9/11 Commissioner asked Tenet, what did you tell the president during the month of August 2001, just before 9/11? And Tenet said, oh, I wasn't in touch with the president at all that month. You know, he was out in Crawford, and I did some, you know, leave of my own. So, and he was asked, not even on the telephone? You had no contact at all? He said, no. Guess what happens? That evening, Tenet's spokesman says, oh, Tenet misspoke. He did see the president in Crawford once, and one in late August he saw him in Washington. But it didn't amount to a hill of beans. Well, it did amount to a hill of beans, because even in his own book, that's the problem with telling lies. You have to remember which lies you told. In his book, George Tenet says, I hustled out to Crawford on the 14th of August because I had to follow up on what how the president reacted to the briefing on the 6th of August, which told him bin Laden determined to strike in the U.S. You'll recall that the president dusted off the briefers and said, all right, now you've covered your ass, get out of here. Well, Tenet went out there to say, look, you know, this is serious stuff. You ought to take note of it. Why didn't Tenet remember that? Because he was still covering up for the president. A week later, according to White House announcement, he was again there. That's the 21st of August. Why? Well, they had just determined that Zacarias Moussaoui had contacts with Al-Qaeda. He was the fellow that just wanted to learn how to fly, wasn't very concerned about having how to land. And so he wanted to brief the president that they had gotten Moussaoui, that the FBI had detained him. And then on the 31st of August, when George Tenet briefed the president again, it was clear that Moussaoui had contacts with the terrorists, and that there was a briefing prepared for George Tenet which said Islamic extremist learns to fly. So there's a whole, what I'm talking about here is that there's a whole record here of deliberate lies told by muckety-muck officials like George Tenet that they have not been held accountable for, and that if you don't look very carefully at the record, you realize that they can lie with impunity. Tenet saying he didn't see or talk to the president in August. We know he was in Crawford on the 14th, on the 21st, briefed him on the 31st as well about what? About warnings about 9/11.